All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Henry Schein Dental Academy webinar series. My name is Adam, Marketing Specialist, and I'll be your moderator. We are excited to welcome Sydney Sargent, who is the Credentialing Manager for Unitas Dental, as our speaker tonight, as she will discuss PPO credentialing tactics. Before we get started, we have a few reminders for you. At any point during tonight's webinar, we do encourage your participation through the chat and Q&A features. Please type any questions you might have into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we will answer them as we have time at the end of the presentation. Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation live or on demand. And this webinar is sponsored by Henry Schein's Dental Business Institute, as well as Unitas Dental. Sydney, welcome, and I will throw it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Adam. Like you said, I'm the credentialing manager here at Unitas Dental, and I've been with the company for about 5 years in varying capacities. And my specialty has always been with practice development. So I've worked with a lot of startup practices, practice acquisitions, and then with providers who are considering adding PPO contracts to their offices. So a lot of that comes back to credentialing, and now I work full-time in our credentialing department. So I'm eager to share some of my expertise with you all tonight. As Adam said, our topic this evening is about PPO credentialing tactics, how to join PPOs and maximize revenue. So a little bit about Unitas. We've been in the industry for about 10 years now. And throughout that time, we've worked with thousands of dental practices all around the country. And currently we represent 900 dental offices. Working with such a broad clientele helps us to have a really good in-depth understanding of the dental insurance market around the country, because it does vary area to area and gives us some good leverage when it comes to representing providers and helping them to negotiate their reimbursement and maximize those relationships. So this evening, my 3 takeaways that I'd like to leave you with are a better understanding of what goes into credentialing application, determining which PPOs to join based on reimbursement potential, and then also highlighting some common credentialing mistakes that can lead to costly errors when joining PPOs. So credentialing can be a topic that seems relatively straightforward and a little bit dry, but I'm excited to get in depth a little bit more with each of you, because credentialing does relate so directly to your reimbursement. It's something that is really important to understand. It's always a moving target, and I think that you'll be able to learn something good tonight. So I wanted to start our discussion by laying a foundation of what credentialing is. Credentialing is commonly also called contracting, and I think both are great terms because they're descriptive of what's happening. When you are credentialing, you're entering into a formal contract with the insurance companies, and in doing so, you become an in-network provider or a preferred provider. Again, kind of interchangeable terms there, but that in-network status does allow you to have access to a larger patient base, larger number of card-carrying patients from that insurance company. And of course, that can mean more patients for your practice and in turn, an increase in your revenue. As far as how you become credentialed with an insurance company, like I said, it seems like it should be pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of misconceptions about how to achieve that. I talk to providers every day who are looking for help with credentialing or help understanding the insurance companies and which ones are worthwhile to join. And a lot of times providers think it's an instantaneous process. You can just reach out and say that you're interested in joining, but there is more to the process. So each insurance carrier is going to require its own set of credentialing materials, and generally those materials are going to include some combination of the items that I've listed here. So to break that down for you, the application, I would think of that as the way that the insurance company is going to gather general information about the practice that you are interested in credentialing with the insurance companies, as well as the provider who is being credentialed. So as far as the information being collected about the practice, it's pretty fundamental. They're going to need a tax ID or a social if you're billing under a social. information about where the office is located, hours of operation, any foreign languages spoken, your number of operatories, information that helps patients locate your practice and find a provider that's a fit for them. The information that's collected for the dentist is more specific to their credentials. So when the insurance company is going through their end of the credentialing process, they're reviewing the doctor's work history, their malpractice history, if that exists. They're verifying that they're a licensed dentist with a current license, that they have a DEA, insurance coverage. All of those things are requirements. So you're going to have to provide proof of all of that to the insurance company in your application. The agreement, contract, and addendum, you could have just one of these items or a combination of them in addition to that application, but that is going to be a lot more specific to the terms and conditions that the insurance company is having you agree to when you sign up to be an in-network provider. So it's lengthy. A lot of times those agreements and contracts are long. There's a lot of details, but that's where you're going to find out exactly what you're agreeing to in signing up to be an in-network provider. The requirements kind of go beyond those 4 main items that I had mentioned. There's the insurance-specific requirements, meaning there's going to be a set of materials per insurance company, got their name on the top, and it has their terms and conditions and the exact pieces of information that they want from you on their application as well. So that brings up the question, how do you get your hands on a copy of that? Every company is a little different. I know that's an annoying answer to say everything is case by case and can vary, but it's true. So if you're at a loss of where to get the information, I would say starting with provider relations of the insurance company is a great place to start. You can reach out and say that you'd like a copy of the materials and let them know what you're trying to accomplish. They should be able to direct you to somebody that can help. Also, if I'm working with an office and they are wanting to get credentialed with an insurance company that I'm not terribly familiar with, my go-to is Google. If you look up the insurance company plus dentist credentialing, you'll probably get directed to a landing page that either has the actual materials linked for you to download and complete, or email or phone number that you can reach out to request a copy. The general requirements that you should be prepared to provide to the insurance companies kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before, as far as copies and proof of all the dentist credentials and information about your office. And that kind of branches off again into state-specific requirements. So state-specific requirements would be for states, and I jotted these down before this, so forgive me for reading off of this sheet of paper here, but for states like Colorado, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, those are some examples of states that have kind of what you could think of as like a universal application that the insurance companies want you to submit to them. So you would kind of end up bypassing the insurance company applications by providing that in turn. It's a lot to keep track of. It's a moving target, like I said, so it's important to be working with the insurance companies to figure out exactly what they want in your state and in your instance. When we work with providers at Unitas, we've got lengthy checklists of information that you can pull together in advance of starting the credentialing process. So you have everything that you may need to start completing the materials. And we are happy to talk to providers and help them with the credentialing process and to prepare for that process as well. So now that we've kind of addressed what is required during the credentialing process, I wanted to break down what it actually means to be credentialed as a dentist. So when you complete the credentialing process, the insurance company has read through your application, they've reviewed your credentials and decided that you are acceptable to add into their network. You have agreed to their terms and conditions. So they've found you agreeable, and whatever you signed, you've said that you find agreeable as well. So part of that is that you are accepting a discounted reimbursement rate when you treat patients from that insurance carrier. And if you submitted your credentialing paperwork, before you looked at what fee schedule you would be provided and assigned to, the time to disagree with that fee schedule has passed. So it's super important to know that when you submit your credentialing paperwork, you are kind of signing away a lot of your rights and your positions to disagree with what the insurance company wants to do in terms of reimbursement. So credentialing should be your last step in the process of deciding to sign up with insurance carriers. And I'll get into that more a little later on. So when you're in network, you're taking a hit on your reimbursement. So there's got to be some benefit to you as a provider. And that's mainly that you're available to more patients as an in-network dentist. A lot of the insurance companies are, I say tricky, that they will really push hard to direct their card-carrying members to in-network offices. So some of you may have seen this in your practices, that if you treat a patient and you're not in network with their insurance company, that patient may tell you that they've received a letter from the insurance company later telling them that there's a handful of other providers in the area that are in network and they should go there instead because they're going to be able to maximize their benefits. So by being an in-network provider, you are able to be part of that in crowd and avoid that and be potentially able to see more patients. The insurance company will add you to their website. So this is something that is often misunderstood when I speak with providers. They think that that's going to be a fantastic way to market their practice, being on this website. So if I'm a patient and I have Guardian Insurance Company and I want to find a dental practice in my zip code, and so I search that in the directory, I'm going to see dozens of dentists. So it's not going to make your name on that list is not going to stand out and be something special. So in that regard, it's not a great marketing tool. What it can be really helpful for, though, is if you already have a great marketing campaign and a patient finds your practice and are interested in being treated by you, they can hop on the website and search for your name and verify that you are in fact an in-network provider, and then you have a higher likelihood of them coming to your practice for treatment. So it's kind of a twofold process, marketing and PPO credentialing. I think they really work together. It's really not a one or the other type thing. Contracting with PPOs is not going to bring you an influx in patients, but it can make you a better candidate for in-network patients potentially. These last two bullet points, they are things that sometimes happen when you credential with the insurance companies. Not always, but I think it's extremely important to be aware of. So sometimes when you complete the credentialing process, you are agreeing to be in network with that carrier for a certain period of time. So Cigna is an example that comes to mind because I've seen providers be burned by this before. If you credential with Cigna, you are agreeing that you'll stay in their network for 2 years. So even if you decide to hate their fee schedule or you're having issues with them processing claims the way you'd like, and you would like to terminate your contract, if it hasn't been 2 years, they kind of just tell you tough luck. You agreed to this when you signed up. So there's a few other companies that are also similar to Cigna in that regard, and you want to be aware of that before you credential, so you're not stuck in an unhappy relationship for a few years. Finally, you are also sometimes agreeing to participate with the partners of the PPO insurance that you have just credentialed with. And that can be a major surprise to some dentists. So I want to spend a little bit of time explaining that because it's sometimes unfamiliar. So here is a visual of a direct contract. So if you decided that you wanted to credential with this orange PPO insurance company, you would complete their credentialing requirements, so their application, and maybe they've got a contract. So you would complete that, send it off to the insurance company, and after they review it and approve you and approve your credentialing process, the dentist is considered in-network, and when they treat a patient from this orange insurance company, they're going to follow the fee schedule of the orange insurance company. So pretty basic. Sometimes what happens though is that this orange insurance company has partnered with this green insurance company. And you better hope you like your orange fee schedule, because now you're not just seeing that paying your claims for one set of patients, it's now being applied to two sets of patients. And if you wanted to be out of network with this green company and now you're in network, that might be an unpleasant surprise to you. Or there's the potential that maybe if you had a direct contract with that green company, their fee schedule would actually be better than what you're seeing from this orange one. And so if you don't have intentions to join a lot of plans, you don't like the fee schedule terribly much, then that would be something you would want to know when you're registering and credentialing with the insurance company. Is there other PPOs that they partner with? An example that I can think of that might be familiar to some of you is that United Concordia is a PPO that tends to have fairly low reimbursement rates. Most providers aren't thrilled with them. There's a few special fee schedules out there that you might like, but oftentimes they're reimbursing far below 50% of your office fee charges. And United Concordia actually has a lot of partners. If you were to sign up with them and have that low reimbursing fee schedule, that could be impacting you far and wide. So something to look into if your office is with United Concordia. And then finally, there's this third type of relationship, umbrella network companies. So I'll tell you about a conversation that I had earlier today with a potential client. They reached out to me and were telling me about their contracts at the office and were asking for help with negotiations. And then they mentioned, oh, I talked to a colleague and they said that Zealous is an awesome insurance company and that they have great reimbursement rates. So because they're the best, I would like to credential with them. And what I had to explain to this office was that Zealous is an umbrella network company. So an umbrella network company is a little different than PPOs. When you sign up with a PPO insurance company, you are planning on being a network for those patients from that insurance company so that you can have better treatment plan acceptance, better patient loyalty, and maybe be available to more patients and start seeing an increase in your patient numbers. But when you sign up with an umbrella network company, they actually don't have patients. What you are getting from signing up with an umbrella network company is participation with other PPOs. And then those PPOs have the patients. So it's a little bit indirect. Those relationships can be really beneficial if you get involved with an umbrella with an awesome fee schedule, because you can still participate with PPOs without having a direct contract, and you can get sometimes better reimbursement this way. But if you're signing up with an umbrella network company like Zealous or Carrington or Connection or Dentamax, and you're feeling frustrated that you're not seeing Dentamax patients or Zealous patients, that would be a surprise because you're never going to see patients from those companies. So we'll get into the pros and cons of networking a little down the line, but I did want to provide an explanation of what those relationships are. So what should you understand about the credentialing process? The ideal time frame to start credentialing is one of the most commonly asked questions that I get when I'm talking to our clients and potential clients. And you kind of have to reverse engineer the timeline and think that credentialing on average takes about 30 to 90 days to be completed. And that's not a time frame from your office manager completing the paperwork or a Unitas completing the paperwork. It's from the time that the insurance company receives your completed application, processes it, and then gives you approval to be an in-network provider, and they'll give you an effective date. And then anytime you treat patients beyond or on that effective date, you are in-network and you're using their in-network benefits. So the two scenarios that I would like to just quickly touch on, if you're opening a new practice and you're wondering when the ideal time frame is to start even thinking about the credentialing process, let alone starting it, you think about those 90 days, that there's always a potential for delays. So I would say the ideal time frame is 4 to 6 months before you open, so that you can be at network with all the companies, if not most of them, that you would like to be participating with by your opening. If you're not in network yet, you of course can still treat patients when they're out of network benefits, but if it's not your ideal scenario, then we want to avoid that if we can. If you're adding a dentist to your PPO practice, they're an associate, same specialty type, they're going to be added to the fee schedules that your office is already accepting and contracted on. So there's no need to try to hunt down a fee schedule and figure out what they're going to be reimbursed. You already know it's the fee schedule your office is seeing. So you can start credentialing them as soon as you've hired them or you know that they're going to be starting with your practice. You can go ahead and get that process initiated. I can't harp on this point enough, but truly the most important thing time-wise and about the credentialing process and when you should start it is after you have gotten a fee schedule from the insurance company, you have looked over the most important codes for your practice and found the reimbursement that they're offering to be acceptable. I know sometimes you have to credential with insurance companies, even if you hate the reimbursement for one reason or another. Delta, we all talk about Delta all the time. They're not the most desirable fee schedules, but they do have a lot of patients, so a lot of providers still join. With these fee schedules that you collect from the insurance companies, most of the time the PPOs have those leasing arrangements, those umbrella networks between PPOs or between a network umbrella company. So there's other reimbursement that could be considered even, but even the PPOs fee schedule directly, in most cases should be able to be negotiated. Even if they ultimately can't offer that to practice because you're in a saturated market, it never hurts to ask. It'll feel a lot better to know that you attempted negotiations and accepted the fee schedule. If you send in your credentialing paperwork before you see a fee schedule, remember you've agreed that you'll just accept whatever they assign to you. So you want to avoid that and have some say in the matter. How do you know which PPOs are worth joining? It's another really common question I get. So I think you should start by considering why you are even adding PPO participation to your practice in the first place. If you're adding PPO participation for your associate dentist and you, the owner, are already participating, you know that you're going to be matching participation in most cases. So the PPOs that are worth joining are the PPOs that your practice is starting with because you're going to match the participation. If you're opening a new practice, you're going to be considering what plans are popularly used in that area. You're going to be considering, do I want to be a network for most PPOs so I have a better availability to more patients, then reconsider some of the contracts later. Everybody has a different approach to opening a new practice, but that's something that we often find ourselves discussing with our clients. And then the third scenario is sometimes there's practices that have been fee for service for years and years, and it's getting hard to compete with PPO practices in the area as more people have insurance and want to use it. And so maybe you're considering adding plans to help with patient retention issues or issues with growing your patient numbers. So in that instance, it's a little bit more complicated. There's a lot to consider about your current patient base and how accepting a discount on those patients is going to impact your practice. So in that scenario particularly, it's so important to look at the fee schedules and know what you're getting yourself into before you enroll. Credentialing is directly related to PPO reimbursement. When you send that credentialing application in, you have agreed to accept that discount. And in most cases, once you have accepted a fee schedule, it's not going to be negotiable for about another 24 months. Sometimes it's 18 months, sometimes it's 36 months. But regardless, that could be a really long time to be stuck on a fee schedule that you're unhappy with, and that is hardly covering your cost of doing business. So I can't say it enough. Make sure that you know what fee schedule you're getting involved with before you complete credentialing. Avoiding low-paying insurance carriers. So avoiding low-paying insurance carriers can be accomplished by seeing the fee schedules before you proceed. If you find the fee schedules to be unreasonable, they're not going to cover cost of doing business or labs or all the different things that you have as expenses at your practice, then maybe you need to reconsider if that is a plan that's worthwhile for you to be adding, or reconsider if you could potentially participate with that PPO carrier through an insurance company or an umbrella network that would reimburse you at a rate that is appropriate. Guess I just covered that point. The networking relationships. They can really help you to bypass some of those lower paying fee schedules. It's one of the most common tactics that Unitas uses to help providers maximize their PPO profitability. And the reason why I've got Hire Unitas on there, well, we love new customers, but also those relationships can be really hard to understand. So you probably need an expert to explain to you the pros, cons, risks, and benefits of the relationships and what to anticipate. You can learn from others' mistakes, right? So costly mistakes that providers make when they are credentialing. Credentialing, again, it's directly correlated to your reimbursement, your revenue, and profitability. So breaks my heart, but I get doctors calling me all the time thinking they've done an awesome thing by contracting with the insurance companies when they're opening a new practice. Then they reach out to me and they say, Sid, I did everything. I've got effective dates from most of these companies, and now I'm ready to work with you to negotiate the fees. And I have to talk them down and let them know that we can't do that any longer. Once you've got an effective date, it's over. You're going to have to wait that 2 years or however long you've agreed to in your contract to renegotiate at that point in time. Being unaware of how the networking relationships that exist is another major one. If you've got a United Concordia paying most of your claims all of a sudden, you're not going to be thrilled about that. Being unaware of how plan selections correspond with reimbursement, and I'll give you some examples on the following slides, and being unaware of the terms of what is being agreed to. So the networking relationships, I've said it, but they're often misunderstood. A lot of times providers aren't aware that they even exist, how they can benefit them, if there's patients with those companies. But the major benefits of the networking relationships is that they can result in higher reimbursement than a direct contract with a PPO would. So if you can learn more about anything that I've talked about tonight, networking would be something worth trying to get some more information on. Credentialing with them, a network company, and then seeing multiple PPOs being in turn picked up through that relationship means that you've maybe just completed one application and one contract, and then you have multiple plans you're in network with. That's less work for you. You've only completed one application. You also would just have a single fee schedule to load into your practice management software and to keep track of and for your staff to be aware of. So that can be a benefit as well. Cons, they definitely can have some downsides to them, but often those pros do outweigh the cons. A PPO participation status through a networking relationship is a little bit less concrete than if you've had an actual contract with that insurance company. If the partnerships between a network and a PPO change and they are no longer partnered together, you could suddenly find yourself out of network. Normally, that's rare, and they would notify you in advance so you can make preparations for, maybe replacing with a direct contract, but it's possible. So something to be aware of. Sometimes there is patient plan restrictions. So the insurance company that's partnered only has part of their patient base that they'll actually lease to the umbrella, and part of the patients would still be considered out of network. Sometimes it's not a big deal for practices. Other times it drives the office staff crazy. So if that's something that's not going to be comfortable for you, then that may be something you'd like to avoid. And finally, the process of becoming a participating provider with a PPO through a network is lengthier because you are waiting 30 to 90 days to credential with the umbrella company, and then they share your information with their partners, and those partners have to update their systems with the information as well. So you could be looking at 30 to 90 days plus a few weeks or up to 90 days. It's a little bit hard to say company by company, but if you are concerned about speed, networking may not be the route for you. I mentioned that plan selection, being unaware of plan selection can be a downside of credentialing if you do it on your own and you're unaware. And some common examples of the different plan levels that exist with the insurance carriers Classic, Delta PPO, and Delta Premier. In some states, Delta does allow providers to be Premier only still. So if you weren't aware of that, or you accidentally sent in a PPO agreement in addition to your Premier agreement, you could suddenly forfeit your ability to collect Delta Premier rates, which are much higher, and be seeing reimbursement for most of your claims at the PPO rates. That's a significant loss. Same thing with Cigna. They do have two different plan levels. One is going to include all of their patients, so you've got the benefit of that, but they do offer a lower level of fee schedule at that plan. Alternatively, you can take a plan that excludes some of the patients, but reimburses a few percentages higher. So you're always weighing cost and risk with these decisions of what do you care about more? Is it being a network with all patients, or is it the highest level of reimbursement? And everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too, but you ultimately will have to decide, and we can help you through the process of deciding, or you can work with a recruiter that can help you with the process of understanding what's going to benefit you most. But you do need to take into consideration the plan selections and how it may correspond with the fee schedule that you'll be assigned to. Hopefully I didn't scare you too much saying all the things that can go wrong. And you may be asking how you can understand all of this before you credential. So you don't know what you don't know. So it's going to be really important to ask questions, read through the agreements, the contracts, figure out what the terms and conditions are that you're agreeing to. It may be really difficult to understand just from reading those materials, and it could be a dozen pages. So I would recommend working with a recruiter from the insurance company if you can get connected with one. Again, you can start with contacting provider relations, or really any department with an insurance company, and ask them to be connected to the right place, and then wish on your lucky stars that works out for you. But if you can get in touch with the recruiter, that will be great for you. They should be able to explain everything to you and help you to have an understanding before you sign on the dotted line. And obviously, I've mentioned it throughout this whole presentation, but hiring a consultant or hiring Unitas can be a great benefit, because we've worked with thousands of clients. Even if you have an experienced office manager who's done it for a handful of providers or even dozens of providers, it doesn't really compare to the depth of knowledge that we have and that we can share with you. We always love to make the experience of working with us as educational as possible, so that you're able to do better when you may proceed and do it on your own in the future, be able to help counsel your dental colleagues to be able to navigate this process. We really have the rising tides raises all ships mentality, that if all the dentists were able to know that you can negotiate your fee schedules and that you can make decisions about your credentialing based on what you're agreeing to, then over time may be able to change the industry. Oh, and that looks like we've kind of covered all the material that I had prepared for you today. And if we've got time, Adam, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, we've got plenty of time.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And plenty of questions.
Okay, well, I will try my best to answer them.
All right, sounds good. First question is, which insurance carriers are you able to negotiate the best fees?
So sometimes I think it's easier to say which companies don't negotiate, because the majority of them do have the ability to negotiate, whether that's significant or a rather small increase. Most of them do have the ability within the way the business is structured to negotiate. So the companies that do not negotiate typically include Anthem, Unicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Delta, MetLife, and United Concordia. So any company outside of that, that's a major PPO, should have the ability to negotiate with you. And the, I guess the size of the increase that you see can really depend on the market that you're in and how saturated it is. In a less saturated market, you end up being a more valuable provider to that PPO, because they need somewhere to send their patients. So they'll likely be willing to negotiate more to keep you in network, or to get you to agree to sign up initially for the first time.
Can you choose to decline partners of the insurance?
Yes, fantastic question. And I meant to touch on that, so I'm so glad you asked. So yes, with the umbrella network companies and the PPOs, most of them do allow you to what they call opt out. So you can opt out of their partners, or you can opt out of some of their partners. So if you want to kind of be strategic and carve out which ones you partner with and which ones you don't, you do have the ability to do that. And you can do that during your initial credentialing process, and you can even do that after. So if you do realize, holy cow, we just got a network with plans we did not anticipate and we don't want this, you can contact the insurance company and opt out after the fact. Some carriers have a limit, like with the umbrella companies. Their goal is to partner you with as many PPOs as possible. So some of them have a limitation about the number of plans you can opt out of, but it is possible to some degree.
How do we increase our contracted fees with PPOs?
So I would say in two ways. So typical traditional negotiations, that is going to be a way that you can let the insurance company know that you're keeping an eye on your reimbursement, and every 2 years when you become eligible to negotiate, making sure that you're getting in, working with the insurance company to request a fee review and negotiations. It sends them the message that you're paying attention and those networking relationships. So if you're working with an insurance company, you're already contracted, it's been a few years since they've increased your rates, and they say they're not going to do it still, your cost of business has certainly gone up over the years, and that fee schedule may just no longer be feasible for your practice. So if the PPO has partners, it's important to look into what partnerships you could put into play and use to your advantage. So you could end your direct contract with a PPO that's not willing to negotiate or reimbursing you very low and start participating with them through a different carrier, and you can see increases that way. I don't know if I touched on it, but making sure that you're billing the insurance companies your office fee, not your contracted rate with the insurance companies, is also a way to make sure that when it comes time to negotiate, it doesn't look like they're reimbursing you 100% of their contracted rate. There should be a healthy gap between what you're charging versus what they're reimbursing.
What percentage average would you negotiate an increase for after they present their initial fee schedule?
I hate this answer because it's not what I would want to hear, but it's really case by case. So it could be something around 5%. It could be a little higher. If you consider your contracts with the insurance companies, you are already in network with them, you already see patients with them. So it's going to be a little bit trickier to negotiate your current fee schedule than it is to work on getting a proposal where you want it to be, because a proposal you haven't accepted yet, you don't have strings attached, you don't have a certain time period that you have to wait. Whereas if you are already contracted, you're already in the network. So some providers see that when they just get completely fed up and say, okay, we're terminating, we're out of here, that gets some larger responses from the insurance companies. But it's really going to depend company to company and market to market.
Which are the best PPOs?
The best PPOs is really going to depend on your practice. So there's an insurance company that's relatively new and growing called Always Care. And whenever I collect fee schedule proposals from their company, they knock my socks off. They're like 90% reimbursement. Sometimes they're willing to pay higher than the office's UCR, their office fee that they're billing. But the unfortunate thing about that is that because they're a smaller company and they're growing, signing up with them is not going to have a huge impact on your practice and on your revenue, because you might only see a couple patients until they as a company get bigger. So just because there's an insurance company that offers great reimbursement doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best PPO for your practice. There's certain plans that are more commonly utilized by employers for their benefits or purchased in your commercial market by consumers. And those are going to be the plans that are most beneficial to you because you're actually going to see patients coming from those plans, which is ultimately your goal in contracting with PPOs. You want to be available to the patients. So when we work with new practices, we'll do a market analysis, contact the large employer groups in the area, and determine who their benefits are administered through. And by doing that with 15 or so companies, you can get a pretty good idea of which plans are most commonly used and that you might want to consider adding.
What's the best way when re-credentialing to negotiate fee schedules with insurance companies?
Ooh, this is another really good question. So re-credentialing and renegotiating are actually not going to be linked together. So re-credentialing is when the insurance company needs you to send them updated credentials. So they may want an updated copy of your proof of malpractice insurance or dental license or DEA, and you'll have to comply with their request to provide that, or they can drop you from their network. That's part of your contract, is that you'll keep re-credentialing when they ask you to comply with that. Your re-credentialing can happen after a year of being in network. Usually it's longer, but occasionally it'll happen pretty quick. And you may not be eligible to renegotiate at that time. So renegotiating and re-credentialing are not going to be paired together. So don't think just because they're asking you to re-credential that you can renegotiate.
When you say negotiate rates, do you mean you have the ability to request different rates before credentialing?
Yeah. So if you're a provider who is not contracted with an insurance company, so maybe you're opening a new practice and you're getting ready to sign up with the insurance companies, you already have an idea of which companies you'd like to be in network with. It's at that point in time, you need to review the fees before you contract. So we always contact the recruiters for your area, collect a copy of their fee schedule proposal. That's something that you can do yourself as well. And that fee schedule proposal is not the end all be all. Sometimes, if you're in a saturated market and they can add you in network, but they already have a bunch of other dentists of your specialty type in your area, you're just kind of a dime a dozen, honestly. So they're probably not going to pull special favors to get you a special fee schedule to join their network. It kind of becomes take it or leave it, but we have other providers to send our patients to. If you're in an area that does not, on the opposite side of things, the insurance company may be willing to bend over backwards to give you a really high fee schedule. So they do offer alternative fee schedules. Most of the fee schedules with insurance companies are printed, and they kind of have like levels up and levels down depending on where you fall in the United States. You may be in the upper region, you may be in the lower region. So we can negotiate and try to get you up to an elevated fee schedule.
Great. So I think that's a good lead into this next question. Again, follow up to what you just answered, but how can you control these companies from lowering their rates a year after you sign up?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty uncommon to see a fee schedule lowered. Some of your practices may have seen this happening with Aetna over the last 6 months or so. They offered some really exceptional fee schedules to providers over the last few years and suddenly decided that was no longer realistic for them to offer. So they have been kind of buying providers out of those fee schedules with settlements and paying them a lump sum to go to a lower level fee schedule that they would now be assigned to and then eligible to negotiate in 2 years. So that is a super, super uncommon situation. Delta adjust their fee schedules kind of according to what they see fit based on market data. And you may see a little bit of fluctuation there, but you really should not see a fee schedule decreasing with an insurance company. And if you are, it's definitely something worth discussing with the carrier, figuring out why that happened, how that was allowed. It shouldn't be happening. But give us a call if you have experienced that, and we might be able to help you navigate the process.
Great. And I do want to mention that if we don't answer all the questions before we run out of time, we've still got about 15 minutes left. Certainly feel free to email info@unitasdental.com, and the Unitas team will be happy to help you in any way they can. Moving along, Which Cigna plan is the highest fee schedule?
So Cigna's got their two plans. So Cigna DPPO Advantage, and then they have Cigna DPPO just only. And DPPO is the smaller patient base that you'll be in network with at the higher fee schedule and reimbursement rate. So all of their fee schedules now, I think, start with the letter Z, followed by 3 numbers. And if your 3 numbers are higher than the fee schedule they've offered you before, it's going to be a higher fee schedule. But it's the DPPO plan that will put you at a higher level of reimbursement rate, just generally speaking, in comparison to the Advantage fee schedule.
We have a question here. If you are able to quickly repeat the section about about Delta Premier versus Delta PPO.
Yeah, so in some states, Delta allows providers to contract as Premier only. It's becoming less and less common. Most states over time have shifted, and new providers joining their network are now being required to join PPO in addition to Premier. So if you are a Delta, PPO, and Premier provider, if you treat a PPO patient, you're going to be reimbursed at your PPO fees. And if you treat a Premier patient, you'll be reimbursed at your Premier fees normally. But if you're in a state that you can sign up and be a Premier only dentist, then you can see your Premier level reimbursements being applied to any Delta patient that you treat. And Premier rates tend to be quite a bit higher than PPO. So if you're a dentist and you can be Premier only, you want to take advantage of that opportunity. So if you submitted paperwork that also added PPO for you, you would be undercutting yourself and losing your ability to see those Premier rates being applied to all your patients, and they would only be applied to your Premier level patients. So hopefully that made sense. It's just becoming less and less common because it's a higher level of reimbursement. They're trying to get away from that. So it's important to be asking your recruiter if you're working with Delta to get contracted, if you do have the ability to be a Premier only provider. And if you do, then do that.
Okay, so I was going to say I have a follow-up, and I think you just answered it. But is it possible to leave Delta PPO and only stay with Delta Premier?
So that's going to be only in the states that still allow providers to be Premier only. So if you are in a state that can be Premier only, you figure that out after this discussion, and you would like to drop your PPO plan, Delta will most likely allow you to do that. It's state specific, even though Delta is a national company, each individual state does operate a little bit differently with what they'll allow you to do or not. So you'd need to contact your local Delta to figure out what applies to you, but it's certainly worth looking into, and you should be able to drop that PPO.
Does Re-Credentialing with a certain PPO reset the contract timing to be able to get out of network with them?
No, so good question. That's just kind of maintaining your in-network contract. You don't have to. Some providers think that there's a certain period that they'll just be dropped out of the network. You're going to be in network as long as you continue to re-credential. And like with Cigna, it was Cigna that I said if you joined them, you'd have to stay in their network for 2 years. If it's 3 years in and you have to re-credential, that doesn't reset that 2-year timetable. You're beyond that 24 months, so you can terminate your contract at any time.
Good question here. In your experience, what is the average number of PPOs a dental office typically belongs to?
I mean, it's so different depending on how you operate your business. Some practices heavily rely on PPOs and they accept everything under the sun. And other practices are primarily fee for service. Excuse me. And they will only participate with some of the big ones like Delta and Blue Cross and choose to be out of network with the other plans. It's pretty common that some of the older dental practices that are really established and have excellent patient loyalty that have been out of network forever can kind of maintain that status. But a lot of the newer dental practices find that it's important to add PPOs so that they can compete with large DSOs in their area or just other dental practices that are nearby that accept insurance contracts. So it's really going to depend on how you're operating, more boutique and cash-based, or if you do want to heavily rely on those PPOs to be a source for patient recruitment.
In the event that you are acquiring an office, can you negotiate fees before getting credentialed, even if that office is already in network?
Yes, in some instances you can. So if it kind of goes both ways, to be honest with you. Sometimes when there's a heavy recruitment effort, an insurance company may sign up a practice at a fee schedule that is astronomically high and is wonderful, but they no longer offer in the market. So you could purchase that practice and the insurance company may decline to allow you to inherit that fee schedule, even though you'd like to. Alternatively, you may acquire a practice that hasn't negotiated their fees in 15 years. I talk to doctors all the time that are doing that. And in that instance, there's a pretty good chance that the fee schedules will be negotiable. Furthermore, if they're not negotiable or the negotiations are limited, you can always rely on that backup option of evaluating the PPO relationships one to another and those networking relationships and be able to achieve higher levels of reimbursement. So it's something to always consider. Always consider the relationships between insurance companies and how you can take advantage of them.
All right, we have now entered the umbrella section of the Q&A. We've got a couple questions here on that. Did you say that Dentamax was an umbrella network?
Yeah, so Dentamax is an umbrella network company. The other ones that I mentioned, the major umbrella network companies, were also Carrington, Connection, Dentamax, and Zealous. So some of those plans do have discount plan patients, so card-carrying members, but they're not standard insurance patients. And the main priority with those companies, in my mind, is using them for networking relationships.
Okay, so does Delta have an umbrella company to join or no?
Delta does not partner with any umbrella network companies or other PPOs. So their fee schedule is truly the only way that you can participate with them is through accepting that fee schedule. But
in an umbrella participation scenario, will all third-party plans tied to that umbrella relationship follow the fee schedule you agreed to with the umbrella policy?
right. So if you are already participating with an umbrella, let me find that slide picture for us. It might be helpful to have a visual. Okay, we've got our visual here. So if you were to have a direct contract with any of these green, orange, and purple companies, your direct contract is going to trump or override any relationship with that umbrella network company. If you've got a direct contract, you're going to follow that direct contract fee schedule. If you are out of network with those three carriers or a combination of them, then yes, when you treat the patients, they will follow the fee schedule from that umbrella company. If you're a specialist, there's sometimes some limitations with that, where the PPO itself may have a maximum allowable, and if your umbrella reimbursement is extremely high, then they may have some limitations where you're being reimbursed a few dollars less, but that's a lot less common, but it is something that can occur.
Let's see here. If you are a specialist, is it a good idea to be in a PPO or no?
I talk to specialists a lot who choose to be with PPOs because it can help with referrals. So if your patient is coming from a referring practice that they're in network with and they're sending them to you and you're out of network, it might be a little bit trickier to be able to get that patient for your practice and be able to do the treatment for them. So sometimes it helps the referral process be a little bit smoother to be in network with the PPOs. But again, I think it comes down to reimbursement to evaluate the fees, see if it's worthwhile for you and feasible, and to be strategic with that decision. You've got to have the data before you make the decision, so make sure that you do your due diligence and make an informed choice.
Can we deny discount programs if we are in network with a company that offers both options, discounted and regular?
Yeah. So you get to pick your plan participation with the companies. So Carrington's a great example. They divide it up really neatly for you. If you're one of their umbrella network company, the PPO plans, and if you agree to be in network with their discount plan patients, it's under their POS or point of service plans, and you get to pick what you enroll in. So you just have to be aware of what those acronyms mean, and you can choose not to sign up with those discount plans.
What is the best way to renegotiate fee schedules after being with them for over 5 years? Should I hire a company or should I do it directly?
So I think the biggest benefit to hiring a company like Unitas or another third party, as long as they're a large third party, that we have the market data to understand the other practices around you that we've worked with that are our clients and know what is expected for your area, what's reasonable. And we also have points of contact that we work with day in and day out. And so we're able to achieve that process of negotiations quicker, smoother, and we have that leverage of understanding what type of an increase you should be offered. A lot of times providers are disappointed when I speak with them saying that they've attempted negotiations a handful of times over the course of a few years and they have never gotten anywhere, or an insurance company I'm telling them negotiates is telling them that they don't negotiate. And I think that the biggest barrier is honestly getting in touch with the correct individuals who can actually facilitate the negotiation or fee review process. So that may be something that is difficult for a practice to do on their own.
Is it easier to negotiate a rate when you are adding a dentist to the practice?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say so. If you're adding a specialist to a general dentistry practice, there's a potential that there may be some type of leverage there. Specialists do get different fee schedules than general dentists do. So that's something that you should also be aware of and consider, that if you are a specialist, you should be getting a different reimbursement rate than your general dentist in the practice as well. So adding an associate, I don't think really correlates with leverage for negotiations.
Does Unitas negotiate rates?
Does Unitas negotiate rates?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we do day in and day out. It's our primary objective working with our clients is to negotiate their reimbursement. All of our services are project-based, and we've got project-based fees for that. But we're happy to talk to you about your situation, and sometimes we'll work out special deals to make sure that we can work with clients too. So yes, we negotiate rates day in and day out. It's our primary focus.
What questions do you ask the carrier when negotiating new fees?
So depending on the carrier, they may have those level up, level down fee schedules like I talked about. So you can't really get super fine tuned on those of negotiating just the crown code. You're going to see an increase across the board as you negotiate. Other carriers will literally negotiate code by code. So it's going to depend company to company, but we're going to be looking at things like we can look at your patient numbers, we can look at the time you've been contracted, we can discuss a lot of really minute details and customize what our communications with the insurance companies are based on your practice and scenario. We really avoid making anything just cookie cutter and one size fits all because no practice is going to be the same.
All right, and I think we are going to end with this last question here. But again, if we were unable to answer your question, please email info@unitasdental.com and someone on the Unitas team will be happy to assist you. The last question is, when should I expect my fees to be increased after working with Unitas?
We normally spend, if you're an existing practice and we're negotiating your current contracts, we usually spend about the first 90 days getting a really in-depth picture of your practice. So we would do an analysis of your office fees, an analysis of your production to determine what your top codes are, and we'll be working with each individual insurance carrier to verify your participation status. Are you out of network? Are you in network directly? We'll get a copy of your fee schedule, figure out when it was last assigned or increased, or are you participating through another PPO or umbrella company? And 90 days is sufficient time for us to get all the pieces together that are in play and determine what our game plan is going forward. We will review that information with you in a report at about that 90-day mark, and then start executing the plan. So we could get you negotiations and fee reviews completed with an insurance carrier right away after that 90 days, and others will be a lengthier process of going back and forth. So could happen as soon as 3 months into our relationship together, and then down the line a few months beyond that, depending carrier to carrier. I know, tired of hearing it, but it's true. It's just going to depend.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for all of the questions. We truly appreciate the engagement. As I said, there are still a number of questions that we have not answered, and I do apologize, but please feel free to email info@unitasdental.com, or if you want your complimentary consultation, I believe it was unitashsd.com was the website to go to. Sydney, I, of course, want to thank you for your time and knowledge this evening. If anyone is interested in attending future Henry Schein webinars, please visit henryscheindental.com/webinars for our upcoming schedule. As a thank you for attending tonight, everyone will receive the recording of this webinar via email sometime in the next week. I'd like to thank you all for joining us again, and we look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.